Welcome everyone for this final episode of our three-part webinar series powered by Oracle. My name is Faris and I will be your host for today. Over the past few weeks, we have discussed and found out how personalization at scale drives positive customer experience. We also talked about how businesses can transform service into a revenue driver. Of course, if you're interested in those topics, the episodes are available on demand on oracle.com. Today, we're joined by Vishal Krishnamurthy, Director Customer Experience Strategy and Sales Development with Oracle, to learn how to engage the everywhere buyer by modernizing selling touchpoints. Following Vishal's presentation, we'll be joined by Ishneet Kaur, Head of E-commerce with Lenovo, Vishal Krishnamurthy himself, Rajiv Dar, Head of Sales for Takaful Emarat, and the session will be moderated by Harsha Tawani, Head of Digital Marketing with KPMG. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that the Q&A function is enabled, so feel free to ask our panelists any question that will be answered in the last segment of our session. The chat function is also enabled, so feel free to engage with each other. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Vishal Krishnamurthy. Vishal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. I see we have quite a few attendees, and I'm joined by eminent panelists as well to discuss the topic, which is engaging the everywhere buyer by modernizing selling touchpoints to make every customer interaction matter. The first thought that came to my mind when I saw this topic and when I was going to talk about it is like, who made this long topic? Why is this topic so long? Why is it so difficult to understand? But I have myself to blame because I was the guy who made this topic before we sent it out to Faris to be publicized. And hopefully over the next 1 hour, as we discuss this topic more and more, it'll be a lot more clearer, a lot more easier to understand. And hopefully it would be some value for your time today. So I'm Vishal Krishnamurthy. I work with Oracle and I'm a customer experience strategy and sales development director at Oracle, handling a part of the region that I'm in, especially the Gulf. And obviously we are talking in September. So let me get into the topic without any further ado. So like I said earlier, this topic is pretty long and it is going to be, it seems pretty complex. So let's delve into understanding the topic itself to start with. Yeah. And I've broken down this topic. It's engagement of a buyer. So by definition, engagement is an arrangement to meet or to be present at a specified time with a buyer, a persona that is intending to buy, right? Simple. The complexity that gets into this topic is with the characteristics of a buyer. A buyer today wants to buy at any time, with any device, in any channel. And that's an everywhere buyer, right? Not only that, but that buyer also has a declining attention span. And if you, all of us here would have heard of the attention span of a goldfish, which they say is about 8 seconds, the everywhere buyer's attention span is much lesser than that. And it only keeps on declining as more and more technology, more and more channels evolve in terms of customer experience, right? And therefore, this engagement with this everywhere buyer, this transformed everywhere buyer, is only possible with a modern approach to selling. Traditional approaches to selling won't work for this everywhere buyer, and which is why we require a modern approach towards selling. While you make every customer interaction matter, you only have so much time and attention of that everywhere buyer, which I said is lesser than of a goldfish. You need to be able to make every such interaction matter. And therefore, it becomes important to have a modern selling approach. Well, why are we talking about this topic now? We know what the topic is, but why now is, as you see from here, IDC has talked about saying in Feb 2020, customer experience programs or anything to do with initiatives with customer experience were at number 8. But within about 3 months, and that was in May 2020 or even today, it has come up to number 2. So obviously, it's a very important topic that is being discussed in the boardrooms, that is being discussed everywhere, in either under the guise of digital transformation or customer experience transformation or otherwise. But any initiative to do with customer experience is being discussed today, and sales is one part of customer experience. As Faris mentioned, that this is the third in the series. We discussed marketing, we discussed service, and we are finally discussing sales today as part of this entire series. So again, a little more about why now, apart from COVID, which I would have been remiss if I didn't speak about it. By 2025, Gartner expects that 80% of B2B interactions for sales between suppliers and their vendors would occur in digital channels, right? 2025 is not too far away. It's about 2.5 years away. And if you start now, you would be evolved enough by then to be able to handle that 80% of B2B sales interactions between suppliers and your vendors in digital channels, right? Now, companies that deliver a great buying experience grow twice as fast. Again, this is a Gartner, this is not me, this is not Oracle, this is Gartner, which says that companies that deliver a great buying experience grow twice as fast than that deliver average experiences. Yeah. And today, only 17% of the buying group's time is spent engaged with the potential vendors. So while you know that most of the interactions are going to happen through digital channels, while you know that someone who's going to give a better buying experience is going to grow faster, you also know that only 17% of that time is engaged with potential vendors, of a buyer's time is engaged with potential vendors. So it's all the more important to make that interaction matter. Buyers are spending less time with sellers, so every interaction must matter. Every interaction must add specific value without really slowing down the purchasing cycle. That's crucial. And then finally, delivering a great experience to prospective buyers obviously has the biggest impact on whether they will or not buy something. This applies to B2C as well as B2B buyers. In any case, as long as there is a value that is delivered to me by a seller, then I will engage as a buyer. And this applies to me as a consumer. This applies to me as a B2B buyer as well, right? Which is why it becomes very important. Now, the top chief revenue officers or sales leaders such as yourselves, the challenges that we've seen overall is about streamlining complexities across multiple business functions. Sales leaders and revenue officers such as yourselves have a myriad of business functions to deal with. Any sales cycle in B2B does always start with marketing. You need to identify your audience, you need to send campaigns to your audience, execute those campaigns across multiple channels, perform lead qualification, and then eventually convert one of those leads or multiple of those leads into opportunities and eventually win those, right? That's something that all of us are aware of. That's the marketing to sales cycle. And then you need to work with service and then customer success to retain the customer and so on. All of these business functions typically have operated and are operating in silos. So therefore, for a sales leader or a revenue officer, it becomes important to be able to look at streamlining these business functions, making sure that the silos are broken down within these business functions to make most use of that data and be able to use that to grow the revenue. You also need to obviously ensure that your team's participation or contribution rates improve. How do you do that? Of course, you hire a great team, you hire an all-star team. Not only that, you also decide on technology that will enable this all-star team. Technology that can support or enable an all-star salesperson is the way to go with these days. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Also, you need to increase customer retention. All of us that have been in sales have been part of buying cycles over the past few years, obviously know that having or selling to an existing customer is a lot more easier than a new customer, acquiring and maintaining a new customer. There are different figures I've seen. There are some which says it's 9 times easier to maintain an existing customer or than to acquire a new customer. Some figures that I've seen that it's 11 times. But even if you take 9 times, it's still a lot of impact on the buying cycle. Oracle's point of view is that leaders that are responsible for revenue generation must focus and embrace hybrid selling strategies. It's not enough or sufficient to use traditional selling strategies or a single kind of selling strategies to be able to target your market. And this is essential to make every customer interaction matter. Excuse me. Talking about selling strategies itself, there are 4 different kinds of selling strategies. There is script-based selling. There is need satisfaction selling. You know a need, you satisfy the need, and the buyer may buy. There is consultative selling, which is what we are typically involved in technology selling. And then there is strategic partnering with key accounts, right? One or more of these strategies is essential. The combination is needed to be able to grow revenue and to be able to ensure that revenue growth happens year on year. And the reason I say that is because the market is such that market is segmented, market is fragmented as well, and you need to identify your target audience and use the appropriate selling strategy for that target audience. And the technology that supports a salesperson selling into these markets should be able to cater to both or all of these types of selling strategies. A combination of all of these or one or more of these is where we call as a hybrid selling strategy, which is what is essential to grow your revenue. And Oracle has an answer to that. Oracle Solutions, Oracle, this entire sales ecosystem, has a solution that starts all the way from performance management, and I'll talk about these aspects in a bit in the next slide, all the way from planning to execution and beyond, and also inclusive of partner relationship management. All of this entire sales cycle can be solved for or supported for from a technology standpoint by Oracle. And that has the fundamentals in adaptive intelligence, fundamentals with data management, and fundamentals with digital assistants or chatbots, if you may, right? All of these technologies have these underlying capabilities in the solutions themselves. Not only that, Oracle also has solutions which cater to the overall experience of the customer. So if I said only front office solutions are sufficient, in this case, B2B sales, to handle customer experience, I'd be lying. You need to have a robust back office. You need to have certain innovative capabilities, subscription management for one, to be able to move in the right direction moving forward. As the market evolves, as the needs evolve, as the business models evolve, you need to be able to manage all of these. And therefore, Oracle has this complete suite of solutions integrated seamlessly into the sales solutions, managed or underscored by these fundamental capabilities around adaptive intelligence, data, and digital assistance to be able to manage that or provide that great buyer experience, which will allow you as an organization to grow faster. Now, if I looked at it from a business standpoint, then you could start with obviously planning, and planning would be revenue planning, budget planning, territories and quotas planning, goals planning, incentive compensation planning, and so on. Different kinds of planning that you would need to do, followed by the actual rollout of this plan itself to enable your sales, to onboard them, and to share the content that marketing or the sales business ops or sales ops have generated so that the sales teams are efficient and productive on the ground. Once you've rolled them out, you obviously need to execute them. And this execution happens through the normal Salesforce automation processes. Starts with lead management, the core aspect of SFA. They need to have productivity tools, mobile app, voice, AI, ML-based inputs, LinkedIn inputs, and so on, which is what is one of the channels that is being used. Have the capability to create a package or use an existing package for a customer, depending on the industry that you're selling to, and then also utilize or grow or spread using partners in tier 2 and tier 3 territories as well. So execute your strategy, plan first, onboard the strategy, onboard the team, and then execute that strategy. Not only execution, but also monitoring whether that strategy is working or not is extremely important. So monitoring on a transactional basis, monitoring on a periodic basis, monitoring at an overall business standpoint to get a full view of the business and what is performing and what is not performing is extremely important as well. As the year comes to an end, you need to obviously optimize for the next year. You would have learned from creating the plan. You would have learned from executing that plan. You would have learned and derived insights by monitoring as to how that plan has worked, but you then need to optimize it. And this is where the capabilities such as scenario modeling, analytics, and advanced analytics, dispute resolutions, and so on, along with what-if analysis, it becomes very important to be able to optimize the plan that you created in the first place and then refine that plan for the next year onwards so that you can continuously grow as you go forward in those years of planning and execution. Yeah? Now, while we talk about all of these business functions, it is important to note that not all organizations are at the same level of maturity. There are different levels of maturity, and Oracle solutions can help you no matter at what level of maturity you are. What are the maturity stages, you ask me? And here goes. The first level of maturity is typically called as the foundational sales maturity, where you're building the customer base, you're starting up a business unit within a large organization or a new organization itself, where you have certain capabilities such as basic Salesforce automation. You need a simple mobile app, and you need some email integrations. The business value delivered in this stage is obviously you convert or improve conversions by organizing information on and utilizing that information at the fingertips. Once you champion that, once you become an expert at that, then you move to what is called as connected sales, where you start leveraging a lot more data to make sellers more successful. They improve their productivity slowly and gradually. That's where you start with capabilities such as data management, account and contact enrichments, in addition to the data that you already have. Plan out incentive compensation on a tool rather than on Excel sheets, and then look at territory management as well. And thirdly, then you could move to personalized sales. So a lot more capabilities get added. In the interest of time, I will not read through these capabilities. These will be shared with you. So you will have a view of all of these capabilities that I'm talking about. But the business value there is, more importantly, a faster and more accurate quoting process, which becomes important. Driving subscription revenue. I talked about different business models that the pandemic itself has caused to come, or the evolving market, and then growing channel sales. So all of this, while personalizing the sales towards your market, becomes important. So this is the third level of maturity. And the final level of maturity in Oracle's point of view is the responsive sales, where adaptive intelligence should act upon the data that you already have as an organization and utilize that data, understand those patterns, use machine learning to be able to recommend to the sellers the right step to be taken at an appropriate step in the sales cycle, the right document to be used, the right account to prioritize, and so on. So all of these capabilities will allow you to graduate through different maturity levels, and we can help you from an Oracle standpoint with solutions, no matter at what level of maturity you are as an organization. Now, similarly, whether it's a B2B sales or whether it's B2C sales, if you are in an organization or a business that is into commerce, then Oracle has solutions across the entire commerce ecosystem as well. Whether it's B2C or B2B commerce, whether it's configuration like a Dell.com, where you configure your own laptop or your own computer, or if it's subscription, like you're trying to subscribe to, let's say, a rental car or a Mercedes out there, you want to select which kind of Mercedes, what kind of insurance plans, and how long you want to subscribe to that Mercedes as a rental car, or whether you want to improve the scale and performance while integrating to your existing ecosystem of applications. All of that is something that we can provide with a total commerce ecosystem. Again, as I talked about in B2B sales, you could go through various levels of commerce maturity. Start with foundational commerce, move to transactional, optimized, and finally innovative commerce. And we can, Oracle and Oracle Consulting and its partners can hold hands as you need to move and mature from one stage to the other, while you keep on getting more and more capabilities as you move towards the last stage. So in the interest of time, I believe I have a couple minutes, Faris. I just wanted to cover why Oracle and a couple of case studies. Why Oracle is obviously because we can help you ensure that every interaction is relevant and personalized to your customer throughout the sales cycle, whether it's B2B or B2B2C or B2C sales. You can improve employee productivity by using mobility, by using AI and ML to nudge your sales to take the right steps. And we can help maximize your revenue by improving the customer lifetime value through retention or otherwise, throughout the entire sales cycle and throughout the entire customer life cycle, right? These are the top 3 benefits that we can deliver to you as Oracle for you, sales leaders and revenue officers, chief revenue officers who are probably listening to this conversation. A couple of case studies I did notice from the audience profile that Faris had sent me, that we had quite a few banks. So I have restricted myself to talking about banks case studies within EMEA and global. Obviously, on a need basis, I can share other case studies with any of the interested parties out here that is more specific to their business. But Lloyds Bank is one of those customers in the UK that have been growing with Oracle solutions. They've used our marketing solutions and sales solutions, and they've saved about 3.8 million on campaign costs, and with a 97% deliverability rate, right? There is Columbia Bank, which uses several solutions. It uses marketing, sales, and analytics capabilities from Oracle. They have a customer 360 enabled guided selling. So there's a guided selling to the sales reps. They have marketing collateral that they can build in the marketing module that becomes available in the sales module through the content and experience cloud that Oracle provides. And that helped Columbia Bank improve their revenue by about $2 million, a $6 million plus profit in the year 1 ramp up. And obviously the ramp up continued over a few years. And then finally, there was the Australian Financial Group, where they were able to reduce maintenance costs by about 29% and increase capacity to innovate by about 50%. 5 times higher, faster processing, not by just CX, obviously, but by integrating the sales system or the sales ecosystem to the core banking ecosystem, to the other aspects of the ecosystem itself, to improve the click-through or fast-through processing of applications, and therefore improve the application process rate as well. Right. So these are 3 case studies I wanted to quickly cover before we can move into our panel discussions. Thank you for listening to me. I hope this was short, sweet, and at the end of this, you agree with me that the topic itself wasn't too complex to begin with, and hopefully it's a value for your time. Over to you, Harsha.
Thank you very much, Vishal. It was really an insightful presentation. Though I'm primarily, my background is marketing, but honestly, it gives a lot of insight into the whole journey and the complications that the backend goes through to deploy the modern sort of solutions. I think when we are talking about marketing aspect of things, we talk a lot about data privacy and risk and all of that. What I'm more interested in knowing is data management. I feel that in many organizations, the challenge is that the data is siloed between different departments. Marketing might have a different set of data that they're holding on, and then sales has different, and HR has different. How to tackle that?
Yeah, excellent question. So let me try handle that with, if I can present this slide, if you don't mind. Really quick is when you talk about data, that data is important to be managed, to be maintained in an organization, but also it is important to be able to utilize that data at the points that matter. You need to be able to sort of enable the person or the function that talks to the customer first, whether it is marketing, sales, service, or otherwise, right? So it's essential to be able to derive customer intelligence from that data. First of all, bring in that data, maintain that data, have a single customer profile, stitch a singular customer profile across channels, across devices, across web assets, and so on, and to be able to use that data and expose that data to whichever function taps into that data first. So whether it's advertising, whether it's marketing, service, or sales. For example, you wouldn't want a salesperson to call a customer who's having an escalated service request. Similarly, you wouldn't want to send a marketing campaign. You're from marketing, so I'm sure you're agreeing with me when I say that you would want to suppress customers who are having a negative interaction with the organization at that point and not send them a marketing campaign. And say at the same time, convert service into a point of sale where if a customer calls on, let's say, a call center and he's a great customer and he's happy, then try to sell, cross-sell, or upsell, and therefore increase your revenue. So these are ways in which you can utilize the data, apply AI and ML on the data, and get that intelligence out and activate that intelligence across multiple channels. That's something that you can use data with.
So any challenges that you've seen your clients face in deploying this?
Challenges is their readiness itself, right? So different clients have been in different sort of phases of evolution, if you will, right? Some of them have their data ready, some of them don't have data ready, some of them have legacy applications and so on. So those are the challenges, not the solution itself. Everyone is aware of the buzzwords today of a customer data platform, a CDP. Oracle provides an enterprise CDP, which does precisely this. It makes it easy to onboard data. It makes it easy to cleanse this data. It makes it easier to apply AI and ML algorithms on this data to be able to derive intelligence, which can then be activated across multiple channels.
Yeah, you're right. And I think CDPs are evolving, and I'm not too much aware of the Oracle one, but I think CDPs are evolving big time. So I'm sure the CDP that you're talking about has all the capabilities and everything that from learning you have kind of improvised on and stuff.
Absolutely. Right? All the way from unknown customer to the known customer. True. Yes.
So that's interesting. Ishneet, actually, you are head of e-commerce, and if I may ask you, how do you tackle this? Do you face issues of data being siloed, or no, like now you're at a stage where it's all kind of streamlined?
No, definitely, Harsha. This issue is there where the data gets siloed, and there's a journey towards getting it all streamlined. I think specifically in the region, because e-commerce boost came in, so organizations are still, pacing up to become that e-commerce enabled organizations. And while that we go on that journey, and what Vishal said is very relevant, that CDP is where it is to be, but there's a journey to become that enabled as an organization to reach to the CDP level. So I think, for example, for an e-commerce website, it's important if I tell about a customer, I want to understand how the customer was, how did we actually acquire that customer? What happened on the marketing side of it? That customer came onto my platform. Exactly how did that customer interact with my platform? Where all he or she visited, where he dropped off, why he dropped off, what can we change? And then after that, after making a purchase, if that customer made a purchase, how is the customer interacting with my service center? If he or she didn't make a purchase, why exactly that happened and how we can retarget. Now, these are a lot of different data points. So I think to talk about, I know Vishal spoke about being CDP, which is ultimately, I think, the end goal, talking about the middle point here while on the journey to reach a CDP-enabled organization. It's important to first have the alignment of the KPIs, understand what's the ask on each point of the customer journey, have the common dashboards across teams, have those weekly cadences, right? And that, I think, sets up the metric system within the organization where you're starting to cater to the data and you're starting to understand the customers better and move towards that, the goal. And I think one more important point here is I see very interesting, there are so many interesting companies out there, because one is having your own e-commerce channel, and one is a lot of companies have sort of latched on to the Amazon, Noon, and the marketplaces to increase their e-commerce sales. And while it's easier to get data from your own platform, it's a lot tougher to understand the customer who is actually interacting with your product on third party. So now there are a lot of agencies also out there, or a lot of companies out there which are helping you tackle this problem, wherein you can understand how your customers, how your products are being interacted with over there, what is the competition scenario, where on a weekly basis, where are you lying against your competition, how is your product performing on the platform? Because honestly, there's only a limited set of data that is available to you from a marketplace. So I think these are the various points, depending on whether you have your own e-commerce website or you're a marketplace. But ultimate goal is to have that combined repository wherein you can then apply the AI ML and have your data-centric decision-making towards the end.
True. And I don't know if Rajiv is still on the call, but but I really had a question around that, because now a lot of services, apart from products, there are a lot of services that are kind of, being sold online, most of it. So how do they kind of tackle this? Because I think for them, the competition is more around pricing and stuff. So anyway, that was for Rajiv, but I think Vishal, from audiences, we have a question for you.
Just one thing, Harsha, before moving on. Sure. On services part, I know I probably, if Rajiv's not there, just one, 2 cents from my side would be that service does also add. So if I talk about a mobile as a product, right? And I'm selling the same product on my own e-com website, I'm selling the same product on a marketplace, Amazon, Noon. How do I differentiate? And what does a customer get from our own brand store? And that's where I think service also comes as a very important part for me, wherein a customer is coming to your brand store, is getting that service or that additional benefit of a service, be it a free warranty, be it an accidental damage protection, or the XYZ service benefit. So I think as a brand, that becomes very important to have on your platform, and that impacts your product sales as well.
Of course, totally agree. We have a question from the audience for you, Vishal. What insights have you seen in past deployments of, I think, the CDP that were counterintuitive and could have led to some breakthrough?
Sure. I'm not sure if it's specific to the CDP or in general in that sense. In either case, what I've seen, and I've not been in a consulting org for quite some time now, though it was my first 10 years. But from that part of the experience, I can definitely tell you that some aspects that were counterintuitive was for some organizations try to go full-blown on controlling the experience of the user or the seller that is selling to the buyer. And in that sense, they try to implement a lot of rules, they implement a lot of processes, and sort of make it very difficult to have a seller a free hand. And they felt that by giving that free hand to the seller and using the technology to bind the seller within a certain boundary will be easier to sell. And that became quite counterintuitive to Aju's question, is where you typically start in an agile manner, where you say, let's start with basics, let's start with basic controls, have this much amount of data exposed to the seller, let them use that to get to the buyer, and then we'll figure out as we go by. In various sprints, we try and implement either more rules or relax some of them or otherwise. So that was one of the areas that I saw in terms of how organizations approach this aspect. The second, and if you come to a CDP specific point of view itself, what I've seen in the, and CDP is not, the concept of CDP was probably in 2012, but the technology for CDP has taken form over the last 2 to 3 years, if you will, in terms of the marketplace itself being flushed with a lot of CDP players. And the aspect that I see is sometimes, Ishni was right, to get to the CDP level, you need to have some level of preparedness, some level of evolution in that sense. But CDPs some use cases can also be as simple as getting the data onboarded and simplifying the data to be utilized further. It doesn't have to be applying the complete AI and ML on top of it and getting insights very quickly. It could be just collecting the data, storing it, and then making that data utilized for further capability. So it's a phase-wise approach. Whether that phases come in few months or multi-years, that depends on the organization's use case.
Sure. I think our audience have one more question, which is, okay, no, he's just clarifying. I was referring to AI/ML specifically, since there's a lot of hype around it.
Yes, that's a great question. So Aju, let me, so sorry, you had a comment, Harsha.
No. Actually, my next question was around that, like AI and ML, but yeah, carry on.
I'll let Ishneet maybe sort of contribute to it.
Exactly.
Then I can my shop.
Because I think you are also dealing with it every single day.
Yeah. Ishneet, would you want to take? Yeah.
Sorry, Harsha, can you repeat it? I think my internet connection broke off in between. I couldn't hear the question.
So the question was, what insights have you seen in past deployments that were counterintuitive and could have led to some breakthrough in the context of AI and ML specifically, since there's a lot of hype around it?
Correct. So I think I will answer that from a perspective of your own e-commerce platform. So what happens is you understand the customer journey, and of course, it gets better over time. And AI/ML acts more and more when you have more data. So not as much in the starting of your journey, but overall, when it starts getting accumulated, that gets AI and ML starts applying. So I wouldn't probably reach to that level, but I think what we do as understanding the customer journey is, where in the journey do we see a break, or do we see that something is not performing? We sort of do the A/B testing. Then we sort of deploy that change onto the website to see the further change. So whether it's on the checkout, whether it's on the user journey or individual pages perspective. But of course, to reach to the level of AI/ML, you have to have a certain good amount of data to start deploying that change. Yeah.
I completely agree with Ishneet on that. And that's probably a segue into my answer as well, is the quality of data is important, because it's garbage in, garbage out, right? If I have bad quality data going to an AI and ML algorithm, obviously the output of that AI ML algorithm will be bad. I mean, of course, there are algorithms that detect that today. It's not that they're too simplified, but the AI and ML algorithms are effective only when the data is good as well. So it becomes important on both sides that you have the right quality and quantity of data for that AI and ML algorithm to work, but also that you choose the right AI and ML algorithm that can work on your data. not every single AI and ML algorithm will work on all kinds of data. You need to be able to understand which works for your industry, which works for your kind of business, which works for your channel, and so on, and then use that data appropriately. The advantage with certain COTS vendors like us, and there are several of us, Oracle, Microsoft, SAP, and everyone else, that apply this AI and ML. Different vendors have different approaches. Some provide you a platform, and some like us take a deviation from that and provide you the capability embedded in the application itself, so that you don't have to build use cases from the platform, and so that you can go to market faster and quicker, and you realize the benefits as well. But to Aju's point, it's the data quality and it's the choice of AI/ML algorithm. Sometimes bring your own also helps better. Both of these are an important factor. This leads to, and some of these in some deployments that I've heard of globally has helped decide the future course of action and the breakthrough in there.
Yeah. So no doubt the customers are changing, the buying behaviors are changing, and that's why we're talking about digital transformation. I think more so after the pandemic, e-commerce, digital transformation, and all of that. But how do you strike that the right balance between human and technology? Because the era that we are living in, though the consumer behavior and buying behavior has changed, but still there needs to be some sort of a balance. How do you ensure that? And also, with e-commerce taking center stage, people are worried about job losses and things like that. How do you tackle that? What do you think is the appropriate balance between human and technology then? Vishal, I think I will start with you.
Sure.
Because you're doing this, deploying it in different companies and all of that. So I'd like to understand what is the general kind of consensus on that.
Look, my view, and this is not most certainly Oracle's view, this is my personal view in this case, is that technology can only be a support function, can be an enabler to a human, right? It's the consumption of that data that the technology provides to you that makes the human more productive. It's the support that the technology provides to you that makes the human more efficient. And therefore, the balance would be, as long as technology is able to nudge the salesperson in the right direction. Let's say a salesperson is going through a sales cycle with a certain sales methodology and is in a certain stage of an opportunity. If the data and the technology can understand the stage of the opportunity that I'm in, if it can understand my organization's data and understand, hey, to this kind of account, this is the product that can sell better. If technology can analyze that and provide that input to the human at the right stage, in the right method, through the mobile app, through the laptop, or the browser apps or otherwise, and through notifications or emails, if technology can do that, I think technology has achieved its objective. Beyond this, it either accept the recommendation or not accept the recommendation. Provide that feedback to technology so technology can work on it again. So the balance is automatically attained in terms of saying, I don't make technology too intrusive and too controlling over what a human does, but support the human side of sales, that's why it's an art and a science in itself. And therefore support the salesperson to be able to sell better, make him more efficient and productive, while not being too intrusive.
And Ishneet, practically, you've seen, I think, a lot of CDP deployment and, all these things working in real time. Any practical examples that you can share? Anything you've seen related to this?
And I totally agree with Vishal's point, wherein, technology is sort of an adder. And, after post-pandemic, there were multiple discussions where digital disruption is not a luxury anymore, right? It's become a necessity. And the prediction is that going forward, omni-channel is going to be the biggest channel, because people are going to be present across. And it's predicted few years down the line that the stores, the offline stores, will become more experiential stores. And that's where people would go for, and e-commerce would also remain as a channel to purchase. That being said, various small pointers in that journey to reach that omni-channel goal. If I give you certain examples, we see click and collect, a very simple example these days, where you go on to any website, right? And they say that you can purchase on the website, collect it from a store. A very small example to sort of connect the two. There are examples where you're on the store, but you sort of go and purchase online. So the idea is to understand your consumer wherever that consumer is going, and a true omni-channel is able to do that. If I look at from a website perspective, a consumer is coming, these days people definitely want a human interaction. That's why people go to offline, and now that has changed with e-com. How can we sort of bridge the gap? One example would be to have a chatbot, right? A chatbot on your website. Now, what a chatbot does, of course, it's not 100% human, but it's fed by your algorithm, wherein you understand what does the consumer need when the consumer is coming online. So it's sort of bridging the gap between the two. It's answering to the consumer, and the algorithm fed in is also derived by the consumer behavior on your website. So these are the two examples wherein you sort of try and bridge the gap between the two.
Yeah, that's so true. That's interesting. So, the omni-channel experience is the best kind of, or, is the next thing. What do you have to say about the companies that have only sort of an online presence? We see in every industry, there are companies, especially the small and medium enterprises, that have only that online sort of a channel to buy and stuff. Is there any piece of advice that you want to give them, or any best practice you want to share with them, Ishneet?
Yeah, so there are many companies, and we call them pure plays, wherein they're just online. But we have seen examples of these pure plays. So while we see that offline stores going online, we have seen the reverse as well. If you look at Lenskart.com in India, it started with a pure play, and now Lenskart in India has so many offline stores as well, and they sort of mix the two beautifully well, wherein they mix in their online and offline offerings very well. And now they've expanded in the Middle East as well. So I think the journey, the distinction, what's beautiful about how we have progressed over the years and what pandemic has done. Well, it's wrong to use the term beautiful along with pandemic, but just to say in this space is that the distinction has sort of become blurred. And we see companies going in both direction. Even pure plays are expanding to offline. The only piece of advice is now, if going offline, the idea should be more on offering the experiential side. What is it different that the consumer is getting going to that offline store? What is it that they are getting different when they're coming to your online store? So these questions need to be answered, and then that particular expansion should be looked into.
And that's great. And Vishal, if I had to ask you, not only specifically this, but you deploy these CDPs and the technologies every day. What are the best practices, or advices? Any piece of advice, like how early should a company start thinking about deploying the right kind of CDP? I know it should be initially, but generally, or what are those 3 or 4 basic things that they need to have in place to kind of start going digital and deploying these solutions?
Absolutely. So I've discussed with several clients. I've presented to several clients in this region, in Dubai, in Saudi, in Qatar, and so on. And wherever we've had this discussion of CDP, it typically becomes a part of the discussion because it's a buzzword, right? Everyone wants to talk about CDPs, AI, and ML all the time. And they want to see how that technology can solve something for them. But what I typically talk to my customers is, look at the outcome that you desire. Start from the outcome and work backwards if the CDP will solve for it. Maybe you will have a different piece of technology that will solve for that goal faster, quicker, and in a cheaper manner. Maybe a simple email marketing solution can solve for what you really want. If you really have the data, if you have the wherewithal, if you've done all of that, and then you say, look, I want a CDP which allows me to get the single profile from multiple channels, from multiple at multiple times, and multiple vendors and so on, and then stitch that together across ad tech and martech and sales and service, and then present this profile to any of my business functions, whether it's marketing or service or sales, then I would agree with them from a full-blown CDP deployment. But until you reach there, until you have ticked certain boxes, it does take time. And for that, what we do is we run through what is called as maturity assessments, and happy to do those maturity assessments for any of our mates here, the panelists as well as the attendees here, is where we can talk to them about, hey, look, your organization is a certain state of maturity. Do you tick these boxes? It's a simple, let's say 40 to 45 questionnaire, which answers and tells you, these are the goals that you need. This is what you're doing well. This is the areas that you need to improve. And this is what you need to improve that from a technology standpoint. So you start with your goals and your outcome and then move towards technology, not the other way around.
So what I get from it is that doing a maturity assessment to begin with is most critical for any organization.
Absolutely.
At this
That's
point.
why we even start with saying, let's not jump to the solution. Let's jump to understand your goal, understand the outcome that you require, and then jump to which solution will solve for it after we have done a maturity assessment to see if that will fit. Otherwise, you waste a lot of time, waste a lot of money, and you have a solution that doesn't work for you. Doesn't help us having happy customers and doesn't help the customer themselves.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about that. So Ishneet, what would you say about the maturity assessment, or if I wouldn't put you in spot and say where Lenovo is at the moment, but what do you think? You come from, you've seen Indian market, and then you are here you've been here for some time. So as a market, this region, how developed you think it is to say pure play or omni-channel experience,
So I think it would be wrong, but so I won't say the number of years, but when I moved here, I remember in 2017, I said that, this is 7 to 8 years behind India in terms of where we are in e-commerce. And 2017 is when actually the e-commerce scenario started over here, with Amazon acquiring Souk, Noon coming into the picture. 2018, it was building up. But what has happened over here, again, because of pandemic, sort of we have gained 3 years together at a go because of consumer behavior changing in a forced way. So that gap has reduced. But of course, there's a lot to be done. And that's what I say, in any e-com role over here, biggest part is to have the change management capabilities. Because while every organization understands it's important and they're taking that drive, to drive that change and getting the organization developed to become an e-commerce enabled organization, it is a journey of a few months or a few years. That's taken sort of you devise your 3-month or 6-month goal and you say, this is what will be the change. And you sort of coach the organization also along, take them with you. So I won't say any number of years per se, but definitely this region is catching up, and more so after the 2020.
Of course. And we have Ishneet, you who is using the technology and everything every single day. And then we have Vishal, you who's kind of deploying technologies and enabling organizations. So we have one question from the audiences, and they are saying, when talking about SMEs, they might be financially challenged because of the pandemic and recovering. So integrating technology might not be their priority, but can you somehow convince them that it should be a priority? And you see this every day, Ishneet. So let's start with you and then we come to Vishal.
So I think I speak from enabling your e-commerce. If we are talking about from that angle, the CDP part, I leave it to Vishal. He's the expert on that. So I think these days it's extremely easy and not capital intensive to go online. And why I say that, more so with the upcoming of headless commerce. With headless commerce, what you're doing is you're sort of breaking up your front end and back end. So you have so many players out there, Shopify, Magento, etc., wherein it sort of becomes very quick and not too capital intensive as well to start up your business. And of course, once online it starts rolling, that's when you can plan the further expansion. But just to kickstart, I would say it's not a big barrier these days. So I don't think I would say to starting an e-commerce store to becoming a big barrier in these days, because there are multiple options available.
Vishal,
I
you
won't
live
talk
technology every day, so I think you can convince.
I was chuckling to myself when I saw Prashant's question, and this is a question that has been asked to us multiple times over the past. And contrary to what sort of Ishneet said, I would not talk about the CDP in specifics in response to this answer. But I would definitely agree with Ishneet on saying you make the right choices. You have plethora of options as an SME, even with Oracle. Oracle is perceived as this company, as this enterprise vendor that is expensive, that is difficult to utilize and engage with at times. But what I've been talking about for the pandemic itself, specifically about a year and a half ago, we started this initiative where we said, look, if you have specific goals, if you have specific use cases that can be solved for quicker, and if they give you the right benefit in a quicker amount of time, let's say within weeks, then we are happy to solve for that. And there were specific commercial packages available for that as well. So not everything, Prashant, I don't know if this is the answer to your question, not every use case needs integration. And if there is integration needed, there are ways and means of managing it in the short term, medium term, and the long term. So you define what goal you need in the short term, what you are willing to do or manage in the medium term, and then define a long-term integration standpoint. For example, in New York State, and I can take that name now as long as it remains within this group, is they had to, when the pandemic started, the state government had to move all of their call centers back to home. They couldn't afford to have them in their offices. And we were, with a partner, of course, we were able to ensure that the entire state of New York, the citizens could log on to self-service, get themselves served from a COVID question standpoint. And if they needed to call a call center, then they could call any of the about 150 or 200 agents that were deployed, who were trained within a matter of 4 weeks. The technology was available within a matter of 4 weeks for that transition to happen. Yes, there were glitches in the first 4 weeks, but after that, it was a smooth transition. And that was done within partners. So it's not that it is capital intensive. So that's why that's where I agree with Ishneet saying, not all technology choices have to be capital intensive. Not all technology choices and its implementation or deployment needs to be extensive in the period of time as well. You define your goals, you define short-term, medium-term, long-term, and then choose the technology that helps you achieve that. And we've done that for various customers. And New York State was one such example.
That's great. I think, Prashant, the panelists were convincing enough that you should start thinking about investing in technology. But on that note, I would want to thank you, Vishal, for an amazing presentation and the insights that you gave us today. And thank you, Ishneet, for all your inputs, so insightful, thoughts and inputs. And over to you, Faris.
Thank you, Ishneet.
Hi. Well, again, thank you very much. Thank you everyone who stuck around, and I thank you to our panelists as well for a great conversation and insights. Indeed, has been such a great presentation and a great chat. If you want to find out more about the subject, if you have any follow-up questions, please do visit oracle.com. Vishal and his team will pick up any queries you might have and assist you with your requirements. And yeah, that's it for this webinar series. Do stick around. I mean, we'll be in touch and come up with more great content. So yeah, all the best to you all and have a great day.